You're listening to the Capitol Hill Show with the voice of reason, Tim Constantine.
Good afternoon, everybody. Hi, there is Tim Constantine with you. Now, the news this week, of course, has been the president may have been shut down. His amnesty program has at least been temporarily stopped by a judge down in Texas. What's interesting is the White House immediately said, well, we'll appeal this decision, although Barack Obama, who loves to brag and fancies himself a constitutional attorney, has said, I don't know, we might have trouble with this challenge. Now, this is interesting because this is a guy who is convinced he is always right. But he has now acknowledged this may be hard to challenge. Joining me right now to help sort out what the law of the land is and what the impact of the judge's decision is from the great state of Florida, Congressman Ted Yoho. Congressman, how are you?
Jim, I'm doing great, and it is 46 and blue skies here, and it is an absolutely gorgeous day.
I'll tell you what, there are a lot of Floridians who might say 46, but for the rest of the country, everybody else, all the rest of us are saying, wow, 46, I would kill for that right now.
Really? Everything's great.
Hey, the president has tried to push through this amnesty thing. You were one of the most vocal opponents of it. You've said, wait a minute. The Constitution doesn't allow the president to arbitrarily change the law. You and I have talked about it before, but now a judge has agreed with you. There's a judge there in Texas that says, no, not so fast, Mr. President. You're violating the Constitution. What's the process from here? What's the immediate impact of the judge's decision? And then where do we see things going from here?
Number one, I appreciate you having me on. The immediate impact is this gets back to the rule of law. You know, people wonder why Congress can't do this and they can't do this, or why the president's overreaching and nobody's holding him accountable. It's because we don't follow the rule of law, and this is so significant. And I'm so honored and proud to have this judge in Texas, Judge Heenan, come out with this ruling, because it does get us back to the rule of law, and it says very clearly in the Constitution, Article 1, Section 8, Paragraph 4, that Congress shall have the authority for naturalization and immigration rules. And so we're at that point, and this judge ruled in the favor, and this was the same thing when we introduced our bill on the overreach of the executive amnesty back in December that passed the House. This was the same argument. And so the win for this is, number one, rule of law, number two, the Constitution of the United States, and the American people in our country win on this.
Well, and you point out how there's very specific reference to how and where in the Constitution. This is a 123-page ruling. This goes into great detail. This references specific laws and specifically where in the Constitution. I think from a legal standpoint, forget where you stand on the issue. Just from a legal standpoint, if you're an attorney, I don't know how you argue against this judge's ruling.
I don't, and I think that's a very, very great point you bring out, because the judge said that he does not have prosecutorial discretion to grant 5 million people amnesty or work permits. He can do that on an individual basis, but to do it the way this president wants to do it is rewriting the law. And the president said over 22 times that he cannot change the law. Yet he moved forward. And for a leader of any organization, our country, the president, to move forward in the face of an illegitimate law or an action that he wants to do, I mean, that's really overstepping where you need to go. And the common sense thing is for the Senate to pass the House's bill on funding of the Department of Homeland Security, which funds it 100%. Gives the money to our Coast Guard so they can protect our borders, our coastlines, and to the Border Patrol agents, and to be able to do immigration the way we're supposed to. So it funds that 100%. The only thing it doesn't fund is the very thing this judge said was unconstitutional and or illegal. And so moving forward as a leader, you say, you know what, let's fund everything else, and we'll have this discussion and argument and case later, as far as case law and all that.
I was surprised and disappointed at your fellow Floridian, Marco Rubio, who's come forward now just in the last 24 hours and said, well, maybe we'd better go ahead and give in and just fund DHS, including what the president had requested, because we can't afford to put our security at risk. And I thought, good golly, if there was ever a time to stand up and double-check your backbone here and do exactly what you say. Fund everything else. Fund all the security measures. This is that time.
I disagree with Mr. Rubio. What he's saying is, let's fund everything, even what the president wants to do. In the face of something being illegal, I'm not going to do that. And number one, I truly believe it's unconstitutional. That's why we had that law introduced back in December that passed the House. Why in the world would you fund something illegally? Because once you let the genie out of the bottle or the toothpaste out of the tube, it's not going back in there easily or if at all. And so why would you even want to cross that? And I think that's irresponsible, and I think it's going and flying against the Constitution. And the American people expect us to abide by the Constitution, and more importantly, defend it, protect it. We need to revere that document.
Well, if the president was allowed to do this, if a judge declared that this was legal and he could just arbitrarily go against the existing law of the land and wave his magic wand or his pen and his phone and make this happen, what would stop him from doing something else? What if he decided single-handedly that the marijuana laws in the state or in all 50 states are no longer valid, and anyone who has ever been convicted or is under consideration for conviction of a drug-related offense is granted amnesty? Would anybody have an objection to that? I would. Again, both under substance, but more importantly, under rule of law. What's the difference?
And that again, is a very valid point, because if we don't start at some point following the rule of law, why are we even here? And these are tough decisions. Actually, it's not a tough decision. It's the right thing to do. But you've got to start somewhere, because, like you pointed out, if he's just not going to enforce the law on this and he wants to change this law because he doesn't think it's right, and he starts doing that unilaterally like he has been, not just this president, but the next president comes in and, you know what, we're not going to enforce anything in the Affordable Care Act. You don't have to get that, and it gets rid of that. Or, you know what, we don't think you have to pay your Social Security taxes. No, not that it probably would happen, but it sets the precedent of it's possible to do those things. And when you start breaking the rule of law, nobody follows it, you get chaos and you get a breakdown of society. And I don't think none of us want to go there. We need to go back and pivot back to the rule of law. This president needs to capitulate and say, all right, I get it. And I think the American voters spoke loud and clear in November and said, we don't like unilateral action. We don't like you stepping on the Constitution. So this president should say, I get it. Let's fund DHS. Let's not hold them in jeopardy. And let's have this immigration debate at a different time.
We need to be governed by laws, not by the whim of whomever is living at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Now, let's talk about what the right thing to do here is then. Let's assume that the judge's decision is upheld and that amnesty is not granted. How do we fix the mess here? And I think you and I may be more aligned than some, but I don't buy the argument that, well, we can't possibly get all of these folks who are here illegally back to where they came from. You know what? Maybe not 100%, but the idea that I'm going to shrug my shoulders and not enforce it at all doesn't seem like a reasonable approach either. What is the right approach?
The right approach is, number one, secure the borders. Because, again, this administration, building on past administrations, but this one's done it on steroids, has created a global policy of unenforcement, meaning that people can come here, and especially if this goes through and it gives amnesty or work visas to these people, that the signal out there is come to America, you'll get a work permit, you're granted legal status, and you qualify for free programs, free food, free health insurance, free education, free housing. And you can imagine the exodus from other countries to come to America. So it has to start with border security and enforcement of the rules on the book already.
When you describe America as the land of the free, I didn't realize that what they meant.
Yeah, really. And so it starts with that, and then you look at the situation of all the people here illegally, the 10 to 12 million, 15 million people, whatever number from whatever report you read, about 55% of them came here legally, but they're on an overstayed visa. That's an easy program to fix. And then the other half, roughly the other half, is something we would have to work through. You're not looking at deporting 5 million people. It won't happen. But to move forward with what this president wants to do is irresponsible. It's reckless, because you have to slow the floodgates down before we go further.
Final question before I let you go, Congressman. Do you feel confident with both houses in Congress now under the Republican control that train can be slowed down. You've got a court saying something. You've got the United States Senate saying something. You've got the House of Representatives saying something. All three of you seem to be aligned at this point. Can you hold against this president who seems to ignore everything and everybody?
We can if the senators, including Mr. Rubio, will do what's right for America and not what's right for a political party or an agenda he may have, and get behind America, not a political party. And if we do that, and you have the law on your side as it is right now, this is not about anti-immigration. This is about responsible immigration and dealing with it through the Congress. And I know it's a painful process, but you know what? That's the way our system was set up, and it was made that way by design. There's three branches of government, co-equal branches, and they're out of balance, and our goal is to get them back in line. And I implore and challenge the president to do what's right, and I'll be happy to sit at the table with him and talk about immigration. And I look forward to working with him to solve that problem once and for all.
Congressman, that's the right approach. We appreciate you taking the time today. Enjoy the relative warmth down there in Florida, and I'll talk with you soon.
I'll send you selfies. Take care.
All right. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.
You're listening to the Capitol Hill Show with the voice of reason, Tim Constantine.